Good morning on this Sunday, May 17th, and welcome to the Georgia Gang. This week, Governor Brian Kemp eased some coronavirus restrictions, but is keeping bars, nightclubs, and amusement parks closed. Several new developments in the shooting death of Ahmad Arbery in Brunswick, and Senator Kelly Loeffler hands over documents to the Department of Justice and the Senate Ethics Committee about her stock sales at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. Farron, Phil, Janelle, and Kathy are joining us from their homes as we continue to keep our distance. The debate and discussion begin right now.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia Gang starts now.
Governor Brian Kemp's new coronavirus executive orders loosens restrictions for some businesses while leaving others still closed.
I know this extension is difficult for many Georgia business owners.
While announcing his new executive order, Governor Brian Kemp admitted things won't be easy, especially for those associated with businesses still unable to open, like bars, nightclubs, amusement parks, and concert venues.
However, we believe that waiting a little bit longer will enhance health outcomes and give folks the opportunity to prepare for safe reopening in the near future.
The governor is easing restrictions on restaurants. Summer day camps are also okay, but will have lots of restrictions. Overnight camps are a no-go. Public swimming pools will be allowed to open, but will need to enforce social distancing rules. All of this while the state continues to ramp up its testing and contact tracing programs.
By June 23rd.
Now, the rates of new cases have declined and the number of hospitalized patients has slowed. Critics, though, say it's too early to tell the consequences of the governor's actions. And Phil, I would like to start with you. Just want to kind of get your thoughts on how the state is faring and what you've seen this week.
Well, I think it's been almost 4 weeks since Governor Kemp was the first governor in the nation to really propose a reopening to try to balance safety and public health with staunching the economic damage that's occurred. And as you point out, as of Friday, the cases of the virus are down, and so that's cautiously optimistic. Yes, there's a couple hot spots still in the state of Georgia, but restaurants are reopening, small businesses are reopening. I think there's a mood of optimism that I didn't see over the last couple weeks, and so I think cautious optimism is the watchword.
Theron, are you sensing that optimism as well? And I want to ask you this because the governor's allowing summer camps to open with several restrictions and no overnight camps, but could this give us a good indication of how schools could possibly open in the fall?
Yeah, that was a big announcement from the governor to allow summer camps to open. He stressed the importance of not having overnight stay at these summer camps. But many parents that I'm hearing from, Lori, actually were waiting to see if summer camps were going to be open. But I still hear from a lot of parents, they're very cautious. They want to make sure that there's strict guidelines in place for children to social distance. But listen, I am optimistic that we are heading in the right direction, but I do join some of those critics when they say that we do still have deaths that are occurring in the metro area. We do have some hot spots. And so everyone wants to work together to flatten this curve, but I think the summer camps are going to be a little different than schools. I predict that schools are probably going to take a much more measured approach to this and really see how things evolve.
I know parents like me are all waiting to hear about that. Janelle, the Department of Public Health is still having issues on how it's reporting data. The AJC had a story this week of some embarrassing mistakes reported on the website. I mean, does this give Georgians reason to doubt the accuracy of the data?
No, I don't think it gives us reasons to doubt the accuracy of the data. I think what we're looking at when we're referring to these websites is that they are trying to figure out a way to communicate with the entire state in a fairly measured way that is open and honest with everything and transparent. So what I found out is that what happened was what they were attempting to do was put a chart up that showed how the spread took place over a course of certain particular dates. And as a result of that, people said that the dates were out of order because they were thinking that they were showing a timeline of the spread, when in fact they were actually showing these particular dates. And then the governor came back, the government's office came back and said that it was our mistake for thinking that, maybe this is the right way to do it. We're going to pull it off and try something different. So I think what they're doing is trying to play around with different methods in which to show what's happening, because we have a lot of people who are looking at, the increase in testing numbers and thinking that means that that's the increase in infection numbers, and it's not. So there's a lot of misrepresentation that's happening, or misreading of these charts anyway. So I think they're just trying to figure out the best way to communicate with the people.
Kathy, you've been very skeptical of the governor's actions. What are your thoughts now, considering we are seeing some of these cases on the decline and some of the rates of cases on the decline and the deaths also?
Well, I'm not really sure I agree that we're actually seeing a decline, because one of the things that we know is that there's about at least a 14-day lag in getting those test results back. So what you see for the last 14 days in that data is just the data you have, not the complete picture of the data. So, I think we're plateauing off at a fairly high level, but I don't think we're seeing it drop, and that is concerning. This recent sort of bungling and the constant changes of the way the data is presenting doesn't give people confidence. It may be mistakes, it may be trial and error, but we're not seeing that in other states. And this governor has made too many for this short show, bungles to give people a real sense of confidence that, that we're doing this in an orderly fashion that honors the data.
Phil, I want to talk about the data as well, but we're also seeing more places opening. The Atlanta Zoo is opening, public schools or public swimming pools, will be allowed to open, but we may have yet to see the worst of the economic ramifications. So what do we need to do to get the economy on the right track while keeping the public health the priority?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I think the governor took a gamble that is paying off 4 weeks ago. I was at a restaurant in Sandy Springs that just reopened. The employees there were just delighted to have jobs back and pay coming in. I think patios will be pretty popular with restaurants. But yes, you've got pools opening. We talked about schools. I think it's foolish not to have school in the fall. I was glad to see the University System of Georgia saying that now there'll be classes will be starting in person in all 26 of the institutions. And so I do think that, as I said earlier, I think that we've got more testing now. So that's great, with more tests, with the cases coming down. And again, we have to be careful of the hot spots, as I mentioned earlier. But I think the reopening is going to be continued. Yes, we still have to have the elderly, those in nursing homes, shelter in place into June. That's part of the governor's executive order. And we'll have to regroup in June to see how that's working.
Darren, I want to talk about the hot spots that Phil mentioned, because after the time of this taping, the governor was scheduled to visit Hall County. Is there anything that we can do to monitor these hot spots or prevent them from popping up in your eyes?
Well, I think the first thing we are attempting to do, Lori, is to follow the data. But we've read and we've seen reports of inconsistencies in the data. And so if the data is not correct, then I hope that when the governor goes up to Hall County and he hears firsthand on what's going on there, that he can come back with some type of information to come up with a solution. But what's going on in Hall County is really, really tragic. I mean, you got folks that up there, it has the highest rate of people who have coronavirus. There are workers who can't go back to work. We don't know who is working that may or may not have the coronavirus. And so I'm happy to see that the governor is going up there, but I think that he's got to take swift action. Once he goes up there, he talks to all the medical experts, talk to the local businesses firsthand. But we've got to make sure that Hall County gets the relief and, quite frankly, the data they deserve to try to move past this.
And something we'll be talking about again next week. Thank you all. Well, coming up, several new developments in the Ahmad Arbery killing. We'll discuss that straight ahead.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Email them at georgiagang@foxtv.com.
We will be presenting our evidence in a court of law, whether it's in Glenn County or someplace else. The government will have an opportunity to present its evidence in a court of law, and then, and only then you can judge.
Attorneys for the father and son accused of murdering Ahmad Arbery said this week their clients deserve a presumption of innocence and that the full story has yet to be told. Gregory and Travis McMichael are both charged with murder after the release of a horrific tape of the shooting. And Theron, I'd like to start with you. Your thoughts on what the attorneys had to say, especially the attorneys for Gregory McMichael, who said, quote, "This is a tragedy that at first appears to many to fit into a terrible pattern in American life. This case does not fit that pattern."
Well, here we go, Lori. This is where you see the attorneys start getting involved. You're going to see both sides start sort of presenting new facts. And that's why last week I was, outraged and definitely sort of expressed my concerns with this murder. But now I will call people to really take action and make sure that we pay very close attention, because what we're about to see going forward is the defense's case with new evidence, probably new tapes, new recordings that we have not heard. I suspect, and I have no evidence of this, that we're probably going to start hearing or seeing more if there was a past relationship between the two families or all the individuals that were involved. So now I think that, again, while we all ran for Ahmad Arbery last week and definitely expressed outrage, I mean, we saw a bipartisan, biracial outrage going towards this case. We're going to need that even more as the defense continues to build their facts and we hear different sides.
Kathy, Theron mentioned bipartisan outrage. Georgia's Attorney General Chris Carr has taken a lot of action to move things forward in this case. This week, he asked the Department of Justice to investigate. He also appointed Cobb DA Joyette Holmes to take over the case. He's getting praise from Republicans and Democrats on how he's handled things so far. What do you think?
Well, it's taken a while, and unfortunately, sometimes it takes a video to get people to take action. But I'm glad he's taken the action. I feel like the Cobb DA, Joyette Holmes, is a good addition to this picture. I personally think there is going to need to be a change of venue, but that's not for me to decide. But I think people are focused on this. I'm sure we're going to talk about the possibility of a hate crimes bill, but I think there's much more we need to do to get on top of this this kind of violence.
Janelle, weigh in on this week's developments.
Yeah, you know what? When I heard the attorney, I was thinking to myself that if only Ahmad Arbery had the presumption of innocence when he was dealing with these two men, maybe he would be alive today. At the end of the day, I think we are going to see the attorneys really fight for probably a lesser sentence, because I think we all can say that when two people take the law into their own hand and then it turns out like this, that there has to be some level of consequences. What I'm most interested in is watching how the process that is also being investigated, the process of handling the case in the beginning, how that plays out. My husband and I are good friends with the Carrs, our Attorney General and his wife Joan, and I know that they are people of good character, as well as getting to know and building a good relationship with the District Attorney Joyette Holmes. I think we have the right people on the case, so I'm looking forward to seeing how this plays out.
Phil, Kathy had mentioned the hate crimes bill, and Speaker Ralston said the time for being silent is over when it comes to the hate crimes bill that has already passed his chamber, and he implored Senate leaders to pass it with no amendments, saying it will send a strong message to the rest of the country that Georgia will not be tarnished by this act of evil. It looks as though senators, though, are saying not so fast. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, the Speaker is going to get resistance from the state Senate, and we've had this debate in the last session. It's ironic in my mind, the hate crimes bill that's been produced by Representative Chuck Castration actually is nothing more than a sentencing enhancing bill. And so I would think supporters of a true hate crimes bill wouldn't be getting what they wanted, and opponents of a hate crimes bill may roll their eyes and say, this really, judges already have the power to enhance a sentence when it comes to murder, And so I think it'll get bogged down. I noticed that Chairman Jesse Stone of the Senate Judiciary Committee is an opponent, and that's a strong opponent. I'm not sure where the Lieutenant Governor stands, but I would add a footnote to what we're discussing today, too. And I mentioned this last week. If you're going to change some laws, I want a law allowing the GBI to enter in immediately to any murder case. You don't have to wait to be asked by a sheriff or a police chief or a district attorney. I also want that I think, basically the Attorney General. I think he should be able to come in and not be invited. So those would be two reforms that I would hope would get bipartisan support.
Theron, I want to go back, though, to the hate crimes bill. Speaker Ralston says it's time to bring Georgia into the 21st century. What are your thoughts about this possibly getting bogged down in the Senate, as Phil said?
What's really interesting, Lori, is that historically here with the Georgia GOP, we've seen in the most recent decade that there's always sort of been a race to the right. You know, you want it to be as conservative as you possibly could. What we're seeing right now is a Speaker of the House and an Attorney General who is being much more progressive than we've seen recently from the Republican Party. I think what Speaker Ralston did and said is to be commended. I mean, I'm going to be fully disclosed. You know, I oftentimes refer to him as my friend. I mean, believe it or not, we do disagree on a lot. But I think he sent a strong signal to the Senate and his caucus members to say, hey, it's time for a hate crime bill. I mean, we're one of 4 states left in the country that does not have a hate crimes bill. And so while Phil does make a good point that the bill that passed the House, there is going to be a robust discussion of whether it goes far enough. You are going to see people kind of maybe not want to change it. But what's going to happen is I think you're going to see members of both parties support what the Speaker is saying, and you're also going to see the Democrats ask for more. But at the end of the day, I do think that we have to have this conversation, and I do think we'll get a bill passed.
And we'll continue the conversation right here on the Georgia Gang. Thank you. Coming up, Senator Kelly Loeffler's stock transactions at the beginning of the pandemic are back in the news. We'll discuss after the break.
Join the discussion on the Georgia Gang Facebook page and watch past episodes on the Georgia Gang YouTube channel.
The AJC is reporting Senator Kelly Loeffler has handed over records about stock trades to the Department of Justice, the SEC, and the Senate Ethics Committee. Janelle, I want to start with you since you're the honorary co-chairwoman of her campaign. Can you tell us if she voluntarily handed over the documents or if investigators asked for them?
Yes, so I have not been told anything about investigators asking for them. Senator Loeffler has said even in the beginning that she was going to continue to give more and more information to those who are overseeing anything that's happening. She is not currently under investigation, so there's no need to, create evidence. However, what she's doing is just showing that she is transparent, that she's open, that she wants people to know that there has been no wrongdoing, and that there is records showing that, so that in case there is anyone else down the road who wants to bring this back up for the 1,000th time, it would continue to show that she has done nothing wrong. And as you can see, I mean, they're also trying to throw, Senator Perdue into this and all of this mess as well. And I would just say that, like I said in the beginning, with a few shows back, that we just have to be mindful and understand that, whenever you're the stronger candidate, whether it be financially, whether it be from your past experience as an incumbent, this is what happened. This is something to be expected. But to my knowledge, there has been no one has asked her that she has to do this. It's been her wanting to just continue to exonerate herself.
Kathy, a spokeswoman says Senator Loeffler and her husband, who is founder of the company that owns the New York Stock Exchange, followed the letter and the spirit of the law. Your thoughts on this?
Well, time will tell. The investigation will reveal what it reveals. Circumstantially, the fact that they sold stocks right after a briefing that kind of lends itself to thinking those particular stocks were chosen because of the coming pandemic is something that's going to be hard to dislodge from people because it's a storyline that makes sense. So I think that's really a problem. And, to Janelle's point that, we're in a campaign and people are going to attack people, that is true. But normally people are attacking people's voting records and not particular actions like this. And so I think that's the part that is going to be really, really sticky and difficult for both she and Senator Perdue to overcome in the election.
Let's talk about that, Phil. This issue is also affecting Senator Perdue, who says his advisors will no longer trade stocks in individual companies. So how do Senators Perdue and Loeffler turn this around, considering the economic state so many people are in right now?
What I would advise both of them, I have no connection with either campaign, although both the Republican candidates, Doug Collins and Kelly Loeffler, are friends. I would advise that the left is overreaching with its attacks. The media attacks are overreaching with regard to rich is bad. That's the typical liberal mantra. And I think moderates and independents as well as conservatives reject that. And I would say that Loeffler, I'm sure she's probably down in the polls because of this controversy. I think she ought to do what she does well with her ad campaign. She certainly has the money. And I would say, you know, I'm a child of the private enterprise system of this country that's the envy of the world. And I would pivot on this and I would attack the left for constantly attacking the profit motive. Everybody wants to make more money in this country. I don't care what their ideology is. And so I would pivot and I would attack the attackers.
Theron, I know you want to respond to that.
Can I just
go ahead,
up?
Kathy.
Oh, okay. Well, let me just be really clear. When you look at the polling, it's not just the left that is, believing this and unhappy with Loeffler. You know, she's falling in the polls and she's not leading Doug Collins right now. So clearly, folks in her own party are not very excited about people using their position to profit.
Theron, you want to weigh in? Because also part of Loeffler's appeal for the governor is that she can help win those Republican women in the suburbs. We didn't talk about this last week. You know, what do you make of Karen Handel's endorsement of Doug Collins?
Well, yeah, we did not get a chance to talk about that last week, and that definitely was a big endorsement for the Collins campaign. But let's also be fair. I think this week Senator Loeffler picked up the endorsement of Public Service Commissioner Tim Echols, who's a well-respected person in this state. But I want to go back to something that Kathy said to kind of push back a little bit on Phil. This is not something that the left created, and this is not something that the left is just pushing. I mean, at the end of the day, I believe, and Phil, you agree with me on this, and we both have said it, so I'll give you some credit as well, is from the onset of this, I think that if Senator Loeffler could go back and be as transparent as she is now, not suggesting she wasn't transparent, but it can be more forthcoming with information that she had readily available to her, or maybe not, then I think we would have not been talking about this for the weeks that we've been talking about it. But I do believe that her ads, to Phil's point, are definitely helping her sort of be more relatable. And I think that there is bringing a level of humanization to her campaign. But she definitely is dealing with this issue around what happened or what didn't happen, or what did she know, what didn't her advisors know when they were getting briefed about the coronavirus.
Phil, do you want last word? 10 seconds.
Well, I would say this. I want to just weigh in, if I could, just real quickly. I think that I would agree with Theron. There was a PR problem with the Loeffler campaign. It should have been handled a lot quicker, a lot sooner. However, the left always jumps onto things, and they're doing the anti-rich propaganda line. But Doug Collins and the Republicans so far aren't attacking on that. Now, they're actually sitting back and letting the media do their work for them. And naturally, you know, the Collins people are going to be critical of Loeffler and what she's doing.
All right, well, coming up, winners and losers. Stay tuned, everyone.
Time now for the week's winners and losers.
All right, 2.5 minutes to my panel. So, Theron, we'll start with you for winners and losers.
All right, thank you so much, Lori. My first winner is going to be a client that I represent, Microsoft. They just announced that they're going to invest $75 million in Atlanta and bring about 1,500 new jobs. And then my last winner is going to be AT&T, another client that I represent. They are teaming up with the state of Georgia and Governor Kemp to provide hundreds of Wi-Fi rangers to dozens of school districts to make virtual learning easier. So definitely want to make those two companies my winner this week.
All right, Phil.
Well, my winners are the people of Georgia who are concerned about road safety. Thank God the governor and the Department of Driver Services reversed that idiotic edict that these teenage learner's permits didn't have to take the road test. I don't know if people saw that over 20% of learner's permits fail the road test anyway. That's really reassuring, right? But now 20,000 of these teenagers will have to take the road test. So that's the good news, and an optimistic note, too, from U.S. Attorney General Bill Barr. I like what he said the other day, that the U.S. Constitution doesn't say anything about a pandemic, and we have to be very careful about not violating individual liberties.
All right, thanks, and good luck to the teens who now have to learn that parallel parking really well. Kathy.
Listen, I'd just be happy if they learned to use a turn signal. You know, that seems to be something that's gone by the wayside here in Georgia. I want to really give a shout out to DeKalb CEO Michael Thurman. He's really demonstrating what political leadership looks like in a crisis. He just laid out recently the plan for how he wants to spend the federal stimulus dollars that have flowed to the county to address the epidemic. They're translating public health information into multiple languages, distributing 10,000 masks to low-income neighborhoods, and he's doing a great job. And I went on too long, so I'll leave my loser for next week.
Okay, Janelle, real quick, we only have a few seconds.
Okay, sorry. My winner is to District Attorney Joyette Holmes for being selected to be on this case. She's definitely my winner. And my loser this week is the Obama administration and how they handled the General Flynn case. As we talk about the processes and judicial processes, it starts at the top. So if they're not handling it correctly up there, then we can't expect anything to happen down here.
All right, thank you. And I'll give a shout out to the real estate group of Atlanta known as REGA. They're a commercial real estate group, and I had the chance to speak to them about communicating in these uncertain times. So thank you to them. And thank you all for joining us. We hope you'll make it a great week. See you next week.
The opinions expressed in this broadcast are those of the panelists appearing in this program.